everybody, welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 392.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast number 392.
And this is, of course, Pitface.
I'm Ozone Ocean.
Right now. I'm Pitface, and I'm a beautiful lady, and I wear a bikini, and I go down to the beach.
Sensual Pitface. The girl whose name you see on all the bathroom walls. Give her a whole smile.
Oh, jeez.
Have the northern bound Baines Garfield, who sits in rustic cabins and enjoys cocoa by the fire amongst his Tom Clancy novels. We have the prestigious Tanzarine, who sits Capitol building upon the Capitol building, not in it, upon it, balancing. The day she wobbles will be the day that justice falls from the hips of the angels. We meet our doom under the meteorite.
No pressure.
How lovely. Sounded like you said the hips of the angels.
I did.
Odd. I thought so.
Yes, odd. But strangely fitting. Oh, that was a better introduction than I've ever done.
It was.
So, yeah, we're going to be talking about hobbies or the things you do outside of comics as webcomickers. So that should be fun. We can chat about all our things and Pitt's amateur introductions. That's her main interest at the moment. So, yeah.
And watching simulations of the Titanic sinking in real time.
Tell us about those popping rivets and that tearing.
They go squeeze.
As it deflates.
First, we have to do the featured comic, and the featured comic for this week is something that Kwai has done, and it's Kershaw Brackets. Okay, take it away, Kwai, with Kershaw Brackets.
Hello, this is Kwai Degakse, and the feature I've selected for this week is Kershaw Brackets by Drawing Genius, and it is rated T for teen. Move over, Kathy, and Luann, and that Jeremy kid from Zits. Here's a comic about a modern-day teenager after she gets a new set of braces and gets through the day-to-day with way more than angst. This comic hits the mark on how the younger generation behaves and even has insights to conversations between girls and hanging out with boys at the mall. It is a pretty funny and lighthearted comic. The art is all in color, and the pages are formatted like traditional comic strips. Finally figure out what young people these days are thinking and read Kershaw Brackets by Drawing Genius, rated T.
That was the featured comic, Kershaw Brackets. Thank you, Kwai. Okay, next up we have the featured music from Gum Wallace. And the featured music this week is Starship Captain 2. Starship Captain 2. And I'll introduce this. Launch into the depths of hostile space. The enemy aliens are after us. There are anomalies to investigate, new galaxies to explore, and alien women to procreate with. Fire your proton beams and set phasers to stun. Take it away, Gum Wallace, with this. Oh, yeah, a lot of pewing. All the pews.
Pew, pew, pew.
the music from Garmolis. Thank you, Kersha
Liberally
Brackets.
applied our preparation age.
We're fully prepared for this Quackcast. Fully prepared. So yeah, hobbies. So we're talking about like, you know, we're all webcomic artists, and people who are listening to us are webcomickers too, I imagine, or at least people who read webcomics. But our webcomics, our whole thing, you know, we talk about art and everything related to writing, and these, you know, we use movies as our example all the time, bloody Star Wars. But we are more than the sum of our parts. We are more than just webcomics. And so what do we do outside of that? You know, what informs us? What are the things that make us as people? So, yeah. Baines, what are your other interests? I know
Yes.
you are like, you have been a great musician, and you're an excellent keyboardist and drummer as well.
Yeah, just take out the words great and excellent, and you're right. But thank you. Yeah, I was actually, I don't know if I was drawing first as a kid, like if that was my first active hobby other than reading. You know, I think I was drawing first, and then that went away for a long time, and then came back. I started doing webcomics. But yeah, music was a big thing for a long time. When I was a kid, I started playing drums. When I was a teen, I started playing piano. I started singing and stuff in my 20s. And then in my 60s, I started doing webcomics. And now in my 80s, I'm switching to just looking for a soup that is mild enough in flavor that doesn't make me sick. I don't know what that rant was supposed to be, but yeah, play piano, like a lot of piano and drums, and into music, and into writing prose. I mean, as a hobby, I don't do it a ton. Screenwriting, study.
Oh, yeah.
I study like psychology. That was a serious hobby for years. I like study that kind of stuff.
Huh.
Wow.
Trying to understand people.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that about you.
I know. Well, there's many. Multitudes. I wear many multitudes.
You are
as the
Legion.
saying goes.
You are.
I am Legion. That's what I was trying to say. I spent like a few months. Like I'm pretty serious about hobbies. Like when I get excited about something, I can get kind of into it for a while. I learned like magic for a while. I was interested in for like 6 months.
See?
So I like bought all these books on magic and the occult.
Spells on us.
Spells. Yeah, I was doing hexes and stuff.
Oh.
No, not really. No, like magic performance. You know,
Yeah,
like
like
making
card tricks.
making a coin disappear and all that. Kind of crap.
Magician. Yeah.
Yeah, like a magician. Yeah.
A bouquet of flowers.
So I did that for a little while. Yeah, and I never really got that far. I learned a couple tricks and impressed some, people here and there.
The ladies.
And I was like, all right, no, let it go. Yeah, they love that kind of stuff.
Swimming in pussy.
Floating a coin and jazz like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And what
Do you
else?
ever have to
Yeah,
do
so that's. I'm sorry.
Do you ever have to do any of it?
I'd have to practice again because there's movements you have to do. You have to practice. You have to be sort of on the ball with it. And it's not that long ago I was doing it, but I don't do it right now. I'd have to brush up on it. But I intend to.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
I'll do some for you guys privately on the Quackcast.
Private
private showing.
get my chops back. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's it.
Yeah, that would be good because you're in front of a camera there, so you can control what we see. So you can do all sorts of things.
That's true. I'd have to adapt it for the camera. That actually would make things maybe a little easier.
Yeah, you can turn the camera upside down or use a mirror to
Yeah.
project yourself, so you can do all.
See this pen? Make this disappear. That's
Oh
gone.
my god! How did you do that?
Oh my god.
That's real magic. That's not stage magic. That's
There we go.
That's right.
Yeah, it's web magic. It's Skype based.
Bane's a mentalist.
It's a fairy.
And what else? Those are the big ones that come to mind. But yeah, definitely a smattering of hobbies, sort of give life
Animation.
meaning. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
animate. Oh
dude.
right, yeah, it's so related to comics. I didn't even think. Yeah, animation was a pretty hardcore hobby for a while. Mostly like in the idea of learning the software. Definitely visual arts are a hobby. I'm not great at it. I'm visual arts meaning like framing of movies and like how visually to set up frames, whether it's live action animation or comics or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
field of study. Yeah, all that
Multifaceted.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And all of that,
Yeah.
not all of it, but a lot of it informs you as a person. And you are the person who's doing the comics, so it's related.
Very much. You know what? I read something one time about if you don't know what you really want to do in life or what your sort of purpose might be, you can look at old pictures of yourself or find old like childhood materials that you wrote or something like that, some kind of record of you with as few outside influences as possible, I guess is the idea. And I found this I wasn't looking for it, but I found this old thing I wrote as a kid in school about what I was going to do with my future. It was like just a little half-page thing, and I drew a picture on it. My intention was to be a rock drummer, the name of my band.
Wow.
I had like all this stuff in mind, and I was like, and my fallback position, and this was a hobby for a while. My fallback position was to be a ventriloquist. That was my safety.
That's awesome.
Dude, these
Yeah.
things are so you too. Like
Yeah.
if I had to pick from
Yeah.
a bucket of hobbies that you would have, and these things were,
Oh, really?
it'd be like the top things that, yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Very much so. And I had a picture of myself. I drew a picture of myself with a ventriloquist dummy. I was obsessed with them when I was a kid. Yeah.
Jesus.
And so I looked at that later and I was like, man, that is so close to animation in a weird way.
Yeah, it
where you
is.
sort of take a character and you sort of try to breathe life into it and like make a story out of some other entity, whether it's a drawn entity or a ventriloquist dummy or whatever. So it's like, yeah, that's something in there is all kind of connected.
Oh my God.
And comics too, sort of ditto with comics, obviously.
Yeah.
Like sort of. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it, man.
that
That's
is-
the ABCs of me, baby.
That coalesces so many things because the comics are like, still versions of the animation, but they're also your film interests, writing interests. And the ventriloquist, like you're making them speak for you, and it all comes out in there. So that's amazing.
It's almost all of it is very related. Even the interest in psychology and magic is kind of related to writing, obviously, to characters, to creating a story. Writing a story, writing a script has that kind of artifice of a magic trick. You're trying to tell a story, framing. It's all kind of all the same thing.
Except the music.
The music doesn't connect to webcomics, really. That's true. Yeah, it's the farthest thing away, in a way. But yeah.
This artistic expression, it still remains within that.
That's very
Yeah, it's all in that territory. Like geology was never a hobby. My family tree, never. All of that could be connected to. But more, things outside of that kind of realm, never really super interesting to me.
All right. Yeah. So it has to be sort of something artistic that interests you, or at least
I'm trying to think of
intellectual.
what would an interest be. Yeah. Like what would an interest be that's not related?
cooking.
Like playing baseball or something like that. Cooking. Yeah. Cooking you could kind of relate it, but
Yeah, there's some art.
Like
there is a lot of art
sports or
with
like,
cooking.
fixing cars. It's those, you could relate those things too, but those fields were never really interesting to me at all.
Yeah.
Except through via necessity or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah, I'd
What about
like
you guys?
to list my interests as going to the toilet, having showers, and getting dressed in the morning.
Yeah. I like washing my hands.
I quite enjoyed reading.
Oh God. Yeah. How about you guys? What about you, Tance? What's your I know you are a fantastic writer. You are and you've turned that into not just a hobby, but like a living.
Actually,
Yeah.
a living is, I think, pushing it just yet. But it used to be now that, like when you said we're gonna talk about hobbies, my first reaction was I don't have any. But now that I've been thinking about it, yeah, definitely, writing has been my first ever hobby, and it has persisted. I still write, and I absolutely need to write. I can't not do it. And I remember initially my actual hobby would be to correct short stories I didn't like the ending of. Like I would rewrite them to have the ending that I liked. Or if I couldn't get enough, if it was so awesome that I wanted more of it and there wasn't, I would continue it. I would write more as I would imagine it. That I was around, I think, 9 or 10 when I first did that. I was so satisfied with my genius. At the time, like, oh, I corrected this super famous, internationally famous writer because I'm so awesome. That had been my thing because I had been angry. I didn't like the ending, and I corrected it.
Improved upon it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And then little by little I started thinking, what if there was this guy or this girl and they did this and that and they got turned into little stories that I never finished. And when I managed to finish the first one, I felt super accomplished. And I remember taking it, I think I took it to my father. Like, here is something I created. And he read through it and he told me it needs work. That was that was the feedback.
Oh, jeez, that's devastating.
Not really. I mean, that wasn't actually problematic. I just took it back and told myself I will never show it to him again. But I will. And that's how I started writing. And then I went through this phase where I hated everything I wrote and I burned most of it. And then I started writing again after like a year or so that I said I will never write again. And after that, apparently I got better or something. And people liked it and I continued. So that was my main hobby.
Oh, wow.
My other hobby was collecting medicine books. I would collect all sorts of encyclopedias and illustrated anthologies. Do you call that an anthology? Anyway, things that would tell you how the body works, when the body doesn't work, all that sort of thing. I couldn't
Anatomy
get enough.
books.
And not only anatomy, because it was also, about diseases, old diseases, current diseases. Yeah.
Oh my God. So you're looking up about side effects and all that kind of thing.
I was fascinated.
Lesions.
I was fascinated. Actually, I had this accident once when I was still a kid, and I fell off something in the playground that something you hang off of, and I don't
Monkey bars.
Yeah, probably. So I fell, and below there was no sand or rubber or anything like that. There was hard rock. Because in Greece, either you survive your childhood, then you become tough, or you don't. Anyway, and I landed on my head, basically. I don't even remember how I managed that. And I had to go to get stitches. And I was hilarious. I loved it that I was going to go get stitches. My mom was like pale as chalk and freaking out and everything. But I was like, it was like going to Disneyland. I was going to the hospital, and I was gonna have my stitches done and everything. And I told the surgeon there, I wanna watch. and of course I couldn't, because it was on the top of my head. And I said,
I was wondering how that would work.
Do you have a
incidentally, this is also how she got her hobby in serial killing as well.
Yeah, but we don't talk about that. And
grave robbing.
He was super bewildered, and I told him, like, you could use a mirror, and he laughed and said, listen, I can't use a mirror, but I'll tell you every step of what I'm doing. And that's how it went. And then I wanted to be a surgeon.
Oh my God. Oh wow. Yeah, if things went differently, there's another version of you in a parallel universe operating on someone's head right now.
For sure.
Most likely.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, because you do have a bit of an interest in all the guts and the gory stuff. And...
I like it. I still like it, actually, to be honest.
Makes me cringe. It's definitely not my thing. I hate it. No, if it came to a pinch, I would, even stitch up a wound. I'd like grit my teeth and bear it. I'll handle wounds, but it's not something that I would rush towards. Something I like to stay away from.
I would curiosity for her.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hate. I don't hate anymore, but I used as a kid to really not being able to tolerate horror or gore firsts and stuff like that. But I absolutely loved actual stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
You know what? I can understand why that would be, though. I mean, not to put words in your mouth, and you, of course, say whether this is suitable to what your experience has been. But, like, once you catch a glimpse of what's under there, you kind of can't help but become interested in the body as like a machine, and your body, what do you have, the things that you take for granted, the mechanisms and whatnot that are at play. And for instance, you don't think about the fact that any part of the given day you have a skeleton with you, or you have so many vessels and guts and viscera and gray matter, some of us. And it does become a curiosity once you become more aware of those things. And it's like your own uncharted frontier that's right there with you.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely it. And even as I was like in elementary school, I was a very bad student, and I only progressed to being a mediocre student by the end of high school. By the end of elementary school, I became a good one in high school for some reason. The thing is that I would sit and I would work my hands so that the phalanges would stick up through the skin, and I also have very, very white skin. So on the underside, probably it's not very visible through the camera, but you can actually see the veins.
Yeah.
So I would follow these veins as much as I could through my arm and stuff, and I would try to feel my pulse and all that sort of things. It was a very, very fascinating journey of discovery, and I learned pretty much all the terminology that was available to me about the body, and I couldn't, do division or long division because I wasn't interested.
You're
No
into
interest,
biology. So Tance was exploring her own body in school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for creating that mentality.
I did very well in biology. I didn't like it, biology at all, but I did very well for some reason because I was good at memorizing the bits and pieces and the parts of the body rather than in physics and stuff like that. You had to memorize stuff, but you also had to create stuff from what you memorized, and it was way too hard for me. But yeah, biology it's all about learning about those things and memorizing them, and it's an interesting thing. Yeah, but so that was
That's
your
fascinating hobby, really. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But you never made the step to become a surgeon or a doctor. Why not?
I got hijacked by psychology.
Oh.
You see, I always wanted, when I wanted to be a surgeon, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Because of course. And the idea was, the reason I wanted to be that particular surgeon and not any other kind of surgeon was that I felt that if I could control the brain, I could pretty much heal everything.
Yeah.
Which is very infantile as a thought, but that in my mind at the time, the brain was absolutely everything. The power of the mind and stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, to get into the brain. But then I realized that psychology was more efficient in doing that.
It's more what you really wanted.
Yeah. It would get me faster to what I was aiming.
Yeah.
So that's why I switched.
It's like the difference between being someone who designs computers and someone who's a programmer. And that's what you are.
Yeah, exactly. But I never actually lost my love for, the
brains.
Brains and stuff. But because I had 2 minors in my undergraduate stuff, and one of them was neurobiology.
Yeah.
Because I was insane, and and the other one was literature, because writing.
Well, it's related, but yeah, the neurobiology stuff is very it's a very like what you were saying. It takes you further away from it. Doesn't take you in the direction you wanted, but it's too fundamental. It's too basic. Because you're dealing with very, very the brain on a very basic level, whereas the thinking and thoughts and stuff is much higher level.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to get from that neurological kind of stuff to complex thought and thinking and all that kind of stuff. There's multiple levels in between. So yeah, you went on the right direction, I think. Very much so. Yeah, our technology isn't there yet to give us that level of a control at the neurological level. We are at super basic level from what I know. Actually, Abbott Nahil, excellent member of the Drunk Duck crew. He's a philosopher, and he did a lot of stuff with neuroscience as well. So he was in the neuroscience department at the university in Munich there.
He's one of our Drunk Duck brains.
Yeah.
We keep him in a jar.
It's the level of people we have at Drunk Duck.
Herr Doctor.
Herr Dr. Lipski. Oh, you're not supposed to say his name, probably.
So, what about you, Pitsy? You have some very wild interests as well, don't you? All over the place.
I've always kind of picked up fleeting hobbies and stuff like that outside of art. Art has always been the fundamental thing that has followed me all through my life. But yeah, I've at any given time I'm always interested in this or that. But at the moment, sorry, I just popped a warhead candy in my mouth before you started talking to me.
The sourness is going to get you.
Yeah. So if it sounds like I'm not gonna. I was gonna say something really crude, but it's just candy. But anyway, but at the moment, most of my hobbies have really taken a back seat, including the art, as I work on my thesis. And that I would say archaeology. I mean, the thesis, isn't a hobby, because it's too painful to be a hobby. But it began from a hobby. Yeah. Archaeology began as a hobby. And I don't know. So at the time, at the moment, the closest thing I have to a hobby is a growing interest in where I am for the time being in the UK. So I like to go visit different sites and stuff. Or I like to go find uncommon places to visit, and jump on the train and go do stuff like that, which is also a nice release for me. So basically, I like to go on top of mountaintops and sit among the sheep and contemplate what I'm doing here.
You're not talking like hypothetically this or metaphorically. This is literally, you go down to Wales and you climb a higher mountain and you sit
up to Wales.
Up to Wales.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that was wonderful. So I love to take excursions like that. And usually when I take these excursions, I kind of have a reason for doing so. Like sometimes I go to places that aren't very scenic. And that's part of that is because I like to do stuff like beach combing. And I've been thinking about getting my mudlarking license. And what that is the Thames flows through London, and built up all along the Thames was a lot of old settlements. I mean, back 2,000 years ago, this place was a Roman settlement, Londinium. So I know it sounds funny, Londinium, but so that means there's a lot of history that washes up along the shores of the Thames.
Yeah.
So what people do is they go to basically, you just put on your wellies and you go down to the riverside and you walk along and kind of dig around and scrounge around in the mud until you find things. And so I'd like to get my mudlarking license because that is very much what I'm into at the moment, just kind of looking around, which goes hand in hand very well with my love of archaeology.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just exploring. I've always loved to explore. That's another hobby that's followed me all through my life. So, and a reason why I've never been able to stick to one specific hobby very easily.
and like you're saying, it came from a hobby. So you're interested in like I don't know, Greek mythology and the epic poems and all that kind of stuff. And then you actually went a step further and you were investigating the reality of that and where these people came from, and it keeps on going on from there, and now you're studying it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and that was getting in archaeology. It's been kind of a culmination of different hobbies that I've had all through my life, which is how I kind of realized that I should be in archaeology. Because it didn't happen all at once. It kind of did, but after some soul searching and stuff. And I thought about what are the things that are me in essence? What are the things that I have always loved? And not to be too specific, like the Greek thing, it became specific, but the original answer was just really to say, I've always loved to explore and I've always loved to search for things. Not like things like, oh, there's shit lost in my room. I hate that. But like, when I was a little girl, I would just always, be digging into dirt or, anthills or all sorts of stuff like that. And I remember there was this one winter, just before I got into archaeology, that it wasn't winter yet, but it was really close. The ground was frozen, and I had the metal detector outside for some reason because I wasn't thinking. But the metal detector went off, and I started digging with my bare hands. Like I was trying to hack the ground, but I just couldn't get down in there. And I started to find a grate. And like, that's not that exciting, a grate, right? But for some reason, I just needed to see this grate so bad that I kept on digging in the frozen ground with my bare hands. And my fingers were frostbitten for a week.
Oh my God.
Just sore and hard to use. And that was kind of like the dawning moment. Like, I've always done shit like this. I love it. And it's always worth it, even if it's something stupid like a grate. So I should, if I need to figure out what I want to do in life, maybe it should be something along these lines, So then I just kind of went from there.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Just something like deep down in you that wants a certain kind of information or a certain kind of activity.
Yeah. Just to,
that's amazing.
Like, even if, and it's like you go into these things knowing that it's not going to be anything great, Like I wasn't digging thinking that I was going to find a lost hoard or something. It was just,
You want to find out what it is and where it goes. And
yeah, it's an adventure kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. And you'll also be, in the world of archaeology now, you can, be at exotic locations and, camping out and all that kind of thing. So there's even more interesting interests. And
that's
stuff
what
like
you
that
imagine, but yeah,
yeah. Well, I imagine like you're in Egypt in the 1930s and there's Nazis and that's just naturally what happens.
Well, if it was Egypt in the 1930s, then it would be the poor Egyptians digging for slave labor instead of me actually digging. But
you're sitting there in your leather jacket and your fedora and your whip.
But there's always been all sorts of things, though. I think all through my life, and I'm glad for all of them because I think that they all kind of feed into your experience. Like we'll say jack of all trades, master of none, and that's true. But at the same time, it enables, the more you learn about, different things, the more malleable it lets you be, or it lets your mind be, I think. The more adaptive you can become.
Yeah.
Dealing with different situations and stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
New ways of handling situations and thinking about things because of your extra experience that you have. But you're also doing things like you showed us these excellent miniatures you've painted up. You blast off your
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I haven't bought any of those for a while because a student, funds are limited. But that was fun. That was a lot of fun. It kind of scratched a little itch I have because. Like, the more I write this thesis, I crap on it a lot. It's fine. It's not nearly as bad as I make it sound. But since I've been doing it for so long now, and in these studies in general, because they are intense, the more I do miscreate like the other kind of creative things like art and writing and stuff. Like the other thing I've been getting an itch to do since I've been here, which has been very inspired by staying in the UK, is I really want to make a really cool fantasy story that's kind of like a cross between like Dragon Slayer and Nightmare on Elm Street, like just some really, and so like the more I can't do it, the more I want to do it, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm kind of inhibited from pursuing that right now, but you know what? I think at the end of all of this, as I also continue my career in archaeology and stuff, I think that's also going to feed into my creative methods with comics and whatnot in new ways. I can't really explain, but I think it's going to help create some new, really great things, cool things, you know.
It does.
Anyway.
It does happen that way. So, you know, you think about a lot of the greatest creative people from the last, you know, century or 2 centuries or whatever, and they did the creative things they're famous for on the side. Like, say, Frank Herbert with Dune, which is a magnificent series of novels, and he was like a surveyor or something like that at the time. You know, he wasn't a fantasy, a sci-fi author. He had some other kind of job, and all these kind of things. So artists and musicians and stuff like that, they had other kind of interests or jobs or whatever, but the things they were doing informed this creative work. So yeah, that's the whole thing with us talking about, you know, our outside interests. It informs our creative work and makes us who we are. We're not defined by any one thing.
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
For me, my thing has always been making stuff and creating in all different ways. You know, anything, I look at something, I think, oh, that's great. How much effort would that take to make my own version? And I build and make stuff all the time, and I fix and repair, and you know, I do sewing. That's a big thing with me. I do a lot of sewing, and I'll alter clothes or make stuff. You know, I made my Hussar uniform for many years now, which I love, and I've made all the different parts of that, and I always improving and adding new bits, and then that spawns into new interests like collecting antique swords from, you know, 200-year-old sabers. You know, that works over into there, and then I'm making hats, and then I'm into cosplay, because now cosplay is about dressing up, and that's related to outfits, and then I'm making props and making swords, and you know, being an artist meant that I had
perhaps.
I'll go on.
Sorry, I thought there was a lag. I was just gonna say, in cosplaying, like as your Hussar and stuff like that, does that ever like give you a new insight on how, like, for example, like wearing that kind of thing might feel, that might kind of feed into your depiction of such a character, or things you wouldn't think about? Like, do you find that that's ever kind of the case?
It does in different ways that you wouldn't think, because so wearing that stuff takes a lot of effort, and you have to get into it, and you know, it can be uncomfortable. But I can't really depict that in a comic. But how it does inform me is that people of higher rank, back, especially in very militaristic cultures, wanted to look like they're important and fancy and stuff like that. So they're always adding new things and to their uniforms and stuff like that, and all that gold braid you see, and especially like, say if you watch a lot of movies, you know, where there's generals or whatever, and it's always, I feel so uncomfortable in this shit, and it's, you know, not really me, blah. That's not the reality of it. The reality of it, at least, you know, in the 19th century or whatever, for these very military, they loved wearing that shit because it meant they were more important than everyone else, and everyone else could see it. And even in the 20th century, there's the famous generals like General Patton and Rommel and people like that, so famous. They were very individual, and they had their special touches of, you know, maybe a shiny chrome helmet or something, or, You know, they wear their fancy jodhpurs and have riding crops and all this kind of thing. And and so that helps me with my depiction of leaders, drawing people who are very individual, and they have very crazy characteristic things. That's a very real thing. That's real generals were like that. You know, General MacArthur, his corncob pipe and his aviator Ray-Bans. You know,
coolest guy in the war.
Exactly. And so Pinky's look with the crazy trousers and the pink hair, you know, that's a very cartoon anime kind of thing, but it has a touch of reality in it, you know, because people in positions of leadership want to stand out and they want to make themselves look
it's
fancy.
Also perhaps to say that, like, the way I think of that when I see her in regards to her rank and stuff is that because of the rank, she can do things like that. Yes. She can alter her uniform and do what she likes with it, you know.
Exactly, and you get away with it, and that is the reality. Back in the 19th century especially, that's what they did. They didn't walk around with Arthur's pants, at least not in public. But
that would have been my kind of century.
they did like add extra things to the uniform and put a bunch of feathers in their hat. It's a century of the arse. But yeah, that's kind of fancy things they did, and show off
the age
because
of
they can.
Query.
Because the people under them weren't allowed that kind of freedom. So you hold it over and look at my fancy shit. You could be where I am if only you're as important, but you're not. So suck it.
And you're a one-man army, Oz, so you can do whatever you want to that uniform of yours.
Exactly. Yeah, that was something they did. People were flamboyant to hold it over the recruits who couldn't do that as well. Yeah. So yeah, that does inform PQTA in that kind of aspect. And like I was saying before, so I'm an artist. I was always into drawing as a kid, and I loved that kind of thing. And I always love uniforms. Yeah, that's where the Hussar stuff comes from. But I love making things. And so when I studied art, and I learned about art history, and I learned about, you know, sculpture and painting and all that kind of stuff, which means not only can I, you know, do artwork, but I can use those skills to create, and I can make stuff, I can carve, and I can, you know, sculpt and sew and do whatever, which meant, you know, I made money for a time making armor. You know, I was making like chamfrons for horses. And
see, that's so cool, because like one of the next things that I want to do, like since I have become so like engorged with a longing to make art, I've always wanted to work with some medias that I can do with my hands. I tried, I took what the hell was it? It must have been, it wasn't a pottery course. It was like a clay working course. And I really liked that. And I started getting into, I inherited a stone carving set, and I started playing with that for a little bit, which was really cool. I didn't get very far, but like I'd really love to do more of those kind of 3D work with your hands kind of things, like metal working or something would be really cool to learn.
Yeah.
You know what the thing is with all of these hobbies and stuff, sorry, but like I was just going to make a little aside saying like there's like time is always an issue, of course, especially people with families that just have so much to do and stuff. But like when you got the time, like you're just kind of bored, like especially now with, you know, the accessibility of the internet, or, you know, with some community college courses, like 1 or 2 day courses could be really cheap. Like, just look shit up that you've never thought about before and just try it. You know, not everything needs super expensive equipment or materials in order to begin. You know, it's just there's so many things that you can just kind of test and try, or even new like art methods and stuff like that. Just it's why the fuck not?
True. The barrier to creation is a lot lower than it's ever been now. We have groups called makers, which is a big thing. Maker spaces, so people can go to shared workshops and they can use all amazing tools and learn new things, like, you know, working with LED lights and laser cutters and 3D printers, and you can make whatever, and people will be happy to teach you how to do that. So you can just do incredible things these days, more than you'd ever been able to do in the past. Now, obviously, you could always make things, but these days people are more apt to be able to share techniques and share their skills and to teach you and to pass on their knowledge. So if you're interested in cosplay, you can go down to these people and they'll teach you how to make all the props and stuff like that and the sewing. Or if you're interested in, you want to do a sculpture, they'll help you out. It's not just all, you know, going to community college and learning painting for a semester. You don't have to do that. You can use YouTube videos and learn how to do the painting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's if you're interested in art, at least there's all that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, I taught I taught digital animation for a while, and the people who went to learn, it wasn't all just students out of school. The people who were most enthusiastic were the older people. So there was a grandmother there was a guy who was a mining executive, and he was doing it, and all sorts of people, and they loved it, learning this stuff. So, you know, people who are 60 years old, 80 years old, learning how to do digital animation. It's never too late to pick up new skills and learn new things. Yeah, you don't have to be informed by the interests you had as a child.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's quite good to take in new things, even if they're, for instance, things that you think that you'll never remember how to do or never master and stuff. You don't have to learn things with the sole goal of mastering them. There's far too many things in the world, you know.
Good point.
But I think the more input you have, the less your thought becomes rigid and kind of inbreeds with itself, if I might use such a term. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
your interest
you don't go in circles with it. Exactly. You don't go in circles with the same kind of I was looking for different words and but you know what I'm saying. I'm just being competitive.
Yeah, you're not rigid in your interests, and you're not conservative and locked in on the train tracks of one thing.
Absolutely.
And also lately, YouTube especially, and many other sites, paid or free, make it very, very easy to at least give you an introductory level exposure to things that you might feel you are interested in. So definitely, if you afterwards feel that you want to go into mastering it, you can, but you don't have to go out of your way to get an experience of what it is like. It is a luxury that we have in our own age. It's the internet that is giving this.
That's true. Like on Facebook, I'm a member of this various groups. One of them is sewing and costume. And the thing is, the members of this group include rank amateurs like me, but it includes people who do costumes for major Hollywood films and major BBC productions, and everyone is a member of the group, and there's no sort of hierarchy. Everyone shares, and it's interesting. So people will show their latest costuming project, if they're allowed, for doing this film work, and other people will show this, something they did for cosplay. And everyone is able to share, and you're able to be exposed to all this kind of stuff, through the power of the internet, which is it's a really
Absolutely.
kind of give and take, and this real friendly kind of enlightening thing, which you wouldn't get any other way, really. Because normally communities of people who are into that would be very separate and very regional, that just in Britain or just in Hollywood or just, isolated from each other. Yeah. So it is fascinating. Like, I posted a picture of my hat that I'd done, my shako, with its feathered crest, and which I was very proud of. I like it. And one of the fellows that commented on it saying, yeah, this is really good work. This is really, really fine. And he's saying, I do this for a living. He's one of the few people that make them, and he makes them for like governor generals and that kind of thing, from Australia to Bali to Thailand to America. He makes these crests professionally. He says, yep, and that's they have to make with the finest swan feathers. And that particular crest you've shown there, that would take 150 feathers typically. And he says, yeah, I can see a few problems, but you've done very well. And please don't do this professionally, because there's so few of us doing it. There's so few jobs available. So.
Right.
It's very flattering. Yeah.
It's definitely a compliment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. But the thing is, that doing that feather crest and doing that hat, that was something that I couldn't find that anywhere. I couldn't find that made unless I'd paid maybe $400 for this to be made. So the only option is to make it yourself. And so you learn techniques in doing it, and you learn a whole new skill level. And so now I have, maybe it's not a useful skill because there's not that much demand for that kind of thing.
You can appreciate it, though.
Yeah.
You can really appreciate it now. And I remember before I moved out here, I had the itch to make, I wouldn't quite call it music. It was kind of like music, but they're kind of like just little sound textures and stuff. Some of it was music, but anyway, and I just got the itch to just buy, I forgot what I even bought, but it was just one of those sets that you kind of upload to your computer, and you can download any sound that you choose, if you can save it to your computer or something, and then upload it into the machine, and then just kind of play with it and distort it, and then, make shit out of it. It was really cool, and I loved doing it. And I really don't have any grip on musical theory at all. But it really made me appreciate music in a way that actually expanded my musical taste a bit, because after that I would listen to something that I would usually take for granted and really try to imagine the work that might have gone into it, or like how creative somebody had to be just to see the potential in the certain set of sounds that they've chosen in order to compose them this way and stuff. And you latch on to stuff like that. And you're like, wow, this is something that I've never really considered before. And I wouldn't have given it a second thought, but now it's enriched your world. It's expanded it in such an amazing way,
Yeah, that's is definitely
That's right.
true. Yeah, you have a new way of looking and appreciating the stuff now. An insider's perspective, almost.
I would go that far.
Such,
A little toe in the water, at least.
such inroads, like going into this sort of wavelength, let's say, thinking about these things also augments your empathy, your empathy as a skill. And you might not consider that, because I'm now thinking about music in this way, I might become more empathic, but you get what we call a spillover effect, where your brain will tend to try to analyze the effort that goes into a whole range of things just because of this experience, which is very, of course, beneficial in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you can appreciate it.
Makes you smarter, is the bottom line.
Yeah, it does. It does. So yeah, it's a good thing to have the outside interests, and have as many as possible. Yeah. It's also good to master one thing and to be really good at it, but it does limit you if that's all you focus on.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance. I mean, I think, once again, this is speaking generally, of course, everybody has their own situation, but I think through life, people generally probably will master at least one thing, whether it's something they do at work or whatever. And that's not just relegated to the realm of hobby, but the more you do learn hobbies and get outside influences, the more those things will also feed into that particular skill that you've mastered, and will enable you to perhaps be more fluent with it and connecting it to the outside world, this is all speaking in very abstract terms, but I think I'm just kind of mostly thinking of art, but I also do think of archaeology, going back to this, because archaeology as a discipline is very multifaceted. It has to be, because you can have specialties and you will have specialties, but in order to complete a whole picture of, say, a site or a deposit or something like that, you can't just look at one, you can't just look at, the ceramic deposit in a grave and apply that to, a whole settlement or something like that. You have to look at all sorts of different things, from planning to population to functionality. And that's where all of these different sorts of theoretical structures come in. And in that way, archaeology has become, and it's not to say that you have to master all of those theoretical functions, but that's to say that you have to be aware of them. And so that's a very extreme example of how having outside influences really, really affects this one mastery that you have. But I think that could apply to any number of things. Engineering, for example, where if you're creating a machine or something electronical, that's not just one node that you're dealing with in order to make something work. You have to consider the broader, I almost said specimen, the broader machine, the broader thing that you're creating, not just one node. In order to do that, you have to consider so much. The same thing with creating a comic book panel or characters and stuff, or a whole world. All of these things come and play, interplay together.
I was just going to give an example of, say in archaeology, there have been people who are expert metallurgists, and they're really good at making swords and stuff like that, and that informs their archaeology, so they know how to make all the bronze swords, and that sort of tells them more about the archaeology of those things, because then they would know where, like, hang on, where did this copper and tin and all that kind of stuff come from, and why did they do it this way, and
absolutely, and how much skill was needed to make this particular thing, or how much know-how, or
what kind of trading routes were involved, and
exactly
where would the mines have been, and all that kind of stuff. So that really informs in multiple ways. And in terms of my experience as an artist, so I was always making stuff even before I came to learn, to study art. But when I was studying art, I went to this art school for a few years, and then I went on from there to do a BA in it at a university. And the thing was, because most of the students just went straight from high school to university to study art, and they were basically dumb shits. They didn't know how to make anything. And in university, you don't get taught to make art. They just say, okay, do it. And for me and a couple of others who had that background in actually, studying art as a practical kind of thing and making stuff, we could do anything, absolutely anything. If we could paint and sculpt or print, and we had all that skill because we'd explored all these different things. So that meant that if we decided to approach a project in a certain way, we could do it. And we had all these tools available to us. But these people who only were just sort of thrown into the deep end, they had no options open to them. They would spend all that time just learning how to do the thing rather than that, and and thinking and being conceptual rather than actually doing it and moving on to the next thing. So it always helps to have that, all the other interests and skills available to you rather than just saying, okay, do it.
Absolutely.
As an artist, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, should we add
That's
anything
cool
else,
stuff.
or finish up the Quackcast for this?
I guess we should, if we think of it when this goes live or shortly before, we should make a forum post or something so the community
We'll fight
can
about it.
talk about their hobbies, and we can talk about that on the next episode.
Exactly. I'd like to know about everyone's things. Like Bravo is a noted member of Drunk Duck, and he has his models that he makes. They're fantastic. They're awesome, the models that he makes, and as well as the figurines that he makes the sets for and stuff like that. Highly skilled individual, interest in history as well that informs his work. So yeah, that's a person. Fallopian Crusader, who is does his graphic design and fashion and all that kind of stuff that informs his work. There's a lot of people like that. So yeah, we have some geniuses among us. All right, well, thank you for listening to Quackcast number 392, Outside Hobbycast.
Yay!
Bye-bye.
I don't know why I kept on saying that.